Folks, let me tell you something. This is the kind of Washington swamp circus that makes your blood boil. If you've got any common sense left in this country, here we are in April 2026, and suddenly there is a big bipartisan deal brewing in the House to maybe boot 4 members out on their keisters. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, all in the name of accountability. And this is being sold as some sort of, tit for tat cleanup. But do not buy that spin for a second. This is pure political theater. The elites protecting their club while pretending to drain the swamp they created. I'm talking about the Eric Swalwell stuff. I mean, in a sense, yeah, we can sit here and celebrate that one of the most prolific, demonic, disgusting, repugnant, morally bankrupt members of Congress in modern history is resigning from Congress, Eric Swalwell. But, it's not enough to have accountability for him. No. You've got to have a deal in the back room that says, no, wait, we're not just going to hold Eric Swalwell accountable. We're not going to just expel him. He's one of us, a Democrat. No, we got to make a deal. So look, on one side, you've got Eric Swalwell, the California Democrat who's been strutting around like he's some kind of tough guy on China until now. You've got these fresh allegations from multiple women, including a former staffer, that, they hit like a ton of bricks all at once. She's claiming he sexually assaulted her. I mean, these women, by the way, they're on speed dial. It's like for 10 years, this guy's been up to this kind of behavior. Nobody knew about it, even his best friends. Nobody knew. And you got the news outlets that have all these women on speed dial. They're already giving their confessions on TV. But one of the women claimed, he sexually assaulted her twice when she was blackout drunk. She couldn't consent. He left her bruised and bleeding. Other women are now coming forward with stories of unsolicited explicit messages. These would be nude photos. And Swalwell has denied that these claims are flat false. He says it was just mistakes in judgment. But boom, he suspends his run for California governor and announces he's resigning from Congress before they can vote him out. And then there's Tony Gonzales. Now, I'm going through the 4 people in this backroom deal because it requires 2/3 of Congress to expel somebody. This is a nuclear option that they rarely employ. And so the Democrats and the Republicans come to the table and, okay, we're not going to expel Eric Swalwell unless you give us something too. So we went through Eric Swalwell, and now there's Tony Gonzales. He's the Texas Republican. He admitted to an extramarital affair with a House staffer, which is a violation of House rules. The staffer later died by suicide. Egregious, horrible. Gonzales tried to hang on, but the pressure mounted, and now he's announcing his retirement too. Now, this is ugly stuff. Over on the other side, all right, Shayla Cherfilus McCormick, a Florida Democrat. This is not a bedroom drama. The House Ethics Committee nailed her on more than 24 violations, money laundering, false statements, campaign finance shenanigans, misusing official funds. And she's federally indicted for allegedly stealing about $5 million in FEMA and pandemic relief money. And she funneled it straight into her family business and her own campaign. That's not personal foibles. That's ripping off taxpayers and disaster victims to buy your way to power. And she's denied it, but the evidence is stacking up. And then you've got Corey Mills, number 4, Florida Republican. Allegations of domestic violence and dating violence. A judge granted a protective order to an ex over claims of harassment, threats to leak intimate videos. Another ex talked physical assault, plus ethics probes into campaign finance messes, improper disclosures, possible conflicts with his defense contractor business, and yes, more sexual misconduct whispers. He denies it all, as they all do, but the pile-on is real. So the deal was this neat little pairing, right? Swalwell and Cherfilus McCormick for the Dems, Gonzales and Mills for the GOP. Expel them in pairs so nobody loses a seat in the razor-thin majority. Keep the power balanced while looking tough on ethics. Swalwell and Gonzales are jumping ship first to avoid the vote, which is classic. So, look, how does this stack up against the Swalwell accusations, the ones that really ought to have ended his career years ago? And that's the problem. This guy, I mean, the sexual misconduct, as horrific as it is, I'm not obviously making excuses for that. It's horrible. He needs to go. But not only was it known that this guy was a sexual miscreant and deviant for a full decade, but there's also somebody called Fang Fang. Remember Fang Fang? Let's just take a trip down memory lane, refresh our memories here. Back in 2020, we learned this Chinese woman, Christine Fang, a suspected CCP intelligence operative, she'd cozied up to Swalwell when he was climbing the ladder. This was her MO, by the way. So, I mean, Fang Fang helped bundle donations for his campaign. She got an intern placed in his office. She partied at events with him. Reports suggested that it was personal, possibly romantic or more. I think we know the answer to that. This was not some random flirt. She was part of a broader Chinese honey trap operation targeting rising American politicians. Swalwell later got on the House Intelligence Committee. He was handling the nation's most sensitive secrets about China, the very adversary doing the spying. And the FBI gave him a defensive briefing around 2015. He cut ties only after that. There were no charges. There were no leaks proven. But the judgment was catastrophic. A foreign adversary's asset with direct access to a guy who would oversee intel on that same adversary. Swalwell was a national security risk. There was compromise potential. And what happened? Democrats and the media shrugged it off as old news. Swalwell kept his seat. He kept his committee gig until Republicans yanked it. There was no expulsion talk back then. Just, he cooperated. Now compare that to this current mess, which is why I'm so upset. The other three in this deal. Yes, serious personal sins and corruption, no doubt. Affairs with staff, alleged assault, stealing public money, those deserve consequences, absolutely. They erode trust. They, show abuse of power, abusing power over employees, looting the treasury, but they're mostly internal Washington rot or domestic crimes. Bad actors being bad actors in their personal or financial lives. And that is bad. That is reason for expulsion. But Swalwell's Fang Fang episode, that's on a whole different level, my friends. That is a hostile foreign power, communist China, the biggest counterintelligence threat we face, embedding an asset near the heart of our intelligence apparatus. That's not just bad judgment with women. That's potentially compromising the security of the United States of America. If it had been a Russian spy cozying up to a Republican on the Intel Committee during the Cold War, that would have screamed treason for a decade. But because it's Swalwell in China, it was a nothing burger. And here's the kicker. This new deal to oust four isn't even about revisiting Fang Fang. It's about the fresh Me Too style sexual claims against Swalwell and the other scandals. The old China spy story? still buried. No real reckoning. Just more selective outrage to balance the books politically so the House math doesn't shift. This is why people are fed up. Both parties protect their own until the headlines force their hand. And as I was saying, expulsion is rare for a reason. It's nuclear. But when it happens for staff affairs or campaign fiddling, while the foreign spy access gets a pass, the system's rigged. The real scandal is not just these four. It's that Congress treats security, national security lapses, like a footnote and personal misconduct, like the end of the world when it suits the narrative. That's key, when it suits the narrative. I mean, let's clean house for real or admit it's all a game. I mean, the American people deserve better than this clown show. I mean, hopefully these Fang files come out. And what I am afraid of, what I fear, to be perfectly honest with you, my brilliant audience, and if you're just joining, this is Drew Allen, your millennial minister of truth, Daily Signal columnist in California, is what we're seeing is not, what we're going to see is not a actual investigation intent upon real consequences. It is a faux investigation intended to cover up the worst. How many Swalwells are in Congress? Remember that nearly $20 million slush fund for sexual harassment claims against members of Congress that we pay for, taxpayer slush fund? A few years ago, Nancy Mace, think what you will of her, but she tried to, put sunlight on it. And this is the thing, too, the absolute hypocrisy of these people who have been weaponizing the Epstein stuff without results to go after their political opponents, whether it's Democrat or Republican, or for personal gain. So they demand transparency with Epstein stuff. And there should be transparency with the Epstein stuff. But you've got more recent sexual misdeeds that have taken place in Congress, in their own house. So yes, let's deal with the Epstein stuff, but don't you dare look at members of Congress right now. You understand the fake? You understand the fraud? You understand how they are rope-a-doping the American people? Do you believe that Swalwell's best buddy in Congress, Ruben Gallego, who served his wife divorce papers while she was giving birth to their child, who he palled around, you think he didn't know what Swalwell was doing? A reporter in Northern California said that this has been known since he first came onto the scene over a decade ago. So it was no issue until now, all of a sudden. And part of the reason they're doing this, of course, has to do with California. We have a jungle primary here. That means the top two candidates coming out of the primary on June 2nd, they appear on the ballot. And it was Democrats who actually created this jungle primary system in 2010 or thereabouts. And the intention was to prevent Republicans from even being on the ballot because you have so much Democrat support and fraud that they figured with this jungle primary, you wouldn't even have a Republican to vote for when it came to November. And now it's coming to bite them in the rear. With Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco and others in the race, Gavin Newsom's been such an abject failure and is so disliked that there was no candidate they could rally behind, that the Democrats were going to support. So they were looking at a situation where possibly Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton were the only gubernatorial candidates you could vote for in November. So they had to blow it up. They had to blow it up. I mean, just, do not think for a second. Do not be deceived into thinking that somehow all of a sudden the Democrats, some Republicans too, and certainly the Democrats in Sacramento, Cal, don't think for a second all of a sudden they discovered morality. They did not. It's about politics and power. That's it. That's what forced their hand. And they've got to deal with the fallout somehow. And so again, to get back to my point, we cannot let this Swalwell stuff go away. It cannot be this, oh, we did a backroom deal. 4 people are held accountable. It's, we did the theater. Now we can move on. No, we're not moving on. We're not moving on. And I've got a story here in a second about the first fake impeachment into Donald Trump, which was a hoax as well, about the Zelensky phone call. But we need to subpoena all of Swalwell's phone records, his emails. They want to oust these 4 members of Congress, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, so nothing changes in the power struggle in there because they like it that way. Well, we need to put sunlight on all of you. I mean, I love history. I'm a history buff. And I can't help think about the Roman Empire and the decadence towards the end, where the elites in that society, the politicians, they engage in the same type of misbehavior. Morally bankrupt individuals that protected their own. And I'm a little young to have been around in the Roman Empire or the late Roman Empire. But I can only imagine that it was a similar scenario that we have here in the United States of America within our own hallowed halls of Congress. But the point is, Swalwell is the tip of the iceberg. We need accountability for everybody who made Swalwell. Everybody who looked the other way while Swalwell behaved this way. And we need accountability for how they covered up the Fang Fang stuff. I think the Fang Fang stuff is far more serious than anyone has been led to believe. And I think that looking at the Fang Fang files will incriminate a lot of people in the government who had a vested interest in protecting Swalwell and not letting the American public understand the type of corruption, the type of blackmail, the type of vulnerability that exposed us to as a nation. So I'm not done with the Swalwell stuff, and you shouldn't be either. All right, folks, let me tell you something else. Let's get into this first impeachment of President Trump back in 2019. This is very, very important to understand. You can see the book behind me. It's selling very well right now. I was on War Room with Steve Bannon talking about it most recently, Clinton hoax, Obama coup. That's, of course, about Trump-Russia collusion itself and the declassified documents from Tulsi Gabbard last year that reveal for the first time the architecture of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax turned coup. So, look, I mean, it's the most important book written about Clinton hoax, Obama coup, about the Trump-Russia collusion, bar any, because it's the only book that had access to the declassified documents. And it's important that you read it. But on that note, the first impeachment of President Trump, as many of you probably know, was not some noble pursuit of justice. It was a manufactured scandal, a classic deep state hit job wrapped in hearsay, bias, and procedural sleight of hand. And all of it was designed to undermine the duly elected president and interfere with the will of the American people. And now, thanks to DNI Tulsi Gabbard, dropping these long hidden documents like a bombshell, the whole thing looks even more like the hoax Trump always called it. Imagine this. You're the president. You get on the phone with the new leader of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. You mention looking into corruption, specifically how Joe Biden, while vice president, pressured Ukraine to fire a prosecutor who was sniffing around Burisma, the energy company where his son Hunter was raking in big bucks on the board. At the same time, there's a pause on some U.S. military aid. Democrats scream quid pro quo. Trump's withholding the money to strong-arm dirt on his political rival for the 2020 election. A whistleblower complaint drops in August 2019. The House launches an inquiry led by Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. They impeach Donald Trump in December on abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The Senate acquits him in 2020. The media sells it as Trump inviting foreign interference in our elections. Case closed, right? Not so fast. That was the narrative they rammed down our throats. But here is the real story. The one the quote-unquote people in charge didn't want you to know until now. Back in 2019, even some Democrats weren't buying the full hysteria. Tulsi Gabbard, then a congresswoman from Hawaii, was one of the few, I got to say, with the guts to say there was no compelling cause for this rush to impeachment. She voted present on both articles. Not yes, not no, because she saw through the political theater. So now we fast forward to April 2026. President Trump has tapped, Tulsi Gabbard. She's the director of national intelligence. She declassifies transcripts and documents from those closed-door House Intelligence Committee briefings with the then Intelligence Community Inspector General, Michael Atkinson. Remember this name, Michael Atkinson. Stuff that had been locked away for over 7 years, hidden from full scrutiny, intentionally, even during the impeachment itself. So Gabbard has called it a coordinated effort by elements in the intelligence community to manufacture a conspiracy that Congress weaponized to try to remove Trump. So what do these bombshell docs reveal? Let's break it down, shall we? Just the facts. First off, the whistleblower complaint that started it all, it was pure secondhand hearsay. Let me say that again. It was pure secondhand hearsay. So on the official form, the whistleblower admitted, quote, I do not have direct knowledge of private comments of or communications by the president. Not a single one of the key people that Atkinson interviewed had listened to the call in real time or had granular detail. They were reading between the lines, which is another way of saying making that up. They saw a quid pro quo only after the fact, after the transcript came out. I mean, they built a case on rumors from folks who weren't even in the room. An Atkinson so-called investigation, it was a complete joke. Atkinson talked to just 4 people. The whistleblower, one friend who happened to be a co-author of that infamous 2017 Russia intelligence community assessment, the one pushing the Russia collusion narrative after Donald Trump was elected in 2016. And then you had 2 character references with 0 firsthand knowledge of the call. This key witness, well, they openly admitted personal disappointment with Trump's policies and clashes with his personal beliefs. Bias? You think? So Atkinson ignored DOJ guidance that this didn't even qualify as an urgent concern under the rules. In other words, the DOJ said this didn't even qualify as an urgent concern. What are you doing? But Atkinson went ahead anyway. He didn't bother reviewing the actual call transcript himself even. He rushed it forward, exceeded his role, never even did a full probe, and admitted he hadn't verified if the alleged actions actually took place. He even tweaked processes to fast track hearsay. And then it just keeps getting better, folks. There's the whistleblower's own ties. A registered Democrat, check, had worked closely with Joe Biden on Ukraine issues, traveled with him, discussed corruption cases. The whistleblower had prior contact with the House Intelligence Committee Democratic staff Schiff's team before filing the complaint. But that wasn't even disclosed up front on the form. Only after media buzz did they admit it later. The whistleblower's own supervisor raised red flags about how rushed and poorly handled the whole thing was. But the flimsy, biased complaint, it still gets fast-tracked to Congress. It leaks to the media. It creates the intrigue and the boom. And an impeachment inquiry launches. Schiff and Pelosi run with it despite knowing the weaknesses. There's no direct evidence from anyone who actually heard the call driving the witch hunt. So why does this matter today? Why does this matter today? This reframes the whole thing. The original sales pitch was Trump extorted Ukraine for Biden dirt. Now, the 2026 revelations, the process was rigged from the jump. Hearsay, anti-Trump animus from the same crowd tied to the Russia hoax, procedural violations, deep state actors acting more like advocates than neutral watchdogs. It ties right back into the broader pattern of politicization that we've seen. Russia collusion, crossfire hurricane, all of it. Trump said it was a witch hunt, and these documents give him and the American people the receipts. This shows how the bureaucracy, just like my book does, Clinton Hoax, Obama Coup, how the bureaucracy, the intelligence apparatus, and their media allies tried to usurp the election results. They didn't like the outsider in the White House. So they manufactured outrage to hobble him. So Tulsi Gabbard is shining the light where it belongs. Transparency over cover-ups. And this is what we must demand in Congress as well as it relates to Swalwell and the rest of the demonic figures that believe themselves unaccountable to the American people. So there you have it, folks. Another chapter in the resistance against the America First agenda. They tried then, they tried again, and they'll try again and again. But we are on to them. We are on to them. You know, let's just have a little fun here. Let's play one of my favorite clips of Eric Swalwell. Rest in peace.
The claims are serious. The witness yesterday was credible, and it is something that falls within the purview of what law enforcement can do and should do. And so I think they should let law enforcement do their job and not rely on 5-minute question and answer sessions with senators. Any woman that has come forward publicly with her name and her allegation should be investigated. We don't want to see a judge sent to the Supreme Court with asterisks or question marks around him.
Well, that was him when it was related to Kavanaugh. We've got to believe these women. We've got to give them a platform. Well, live by the sword, die by the sword, I suppose, Eric Swalwell. All right. Let's address the Tucker Carlson, huh? It is indisputable at this point that he is a spokesperson for Islam. He has taken over the mantle of Barack Hussein Obama. Look at this post from him today. The people in charge don't want you to know this, but Muslims love Jesus. Islam reveres him as a major prophet and messenger of the Lord, believes he performed miracles, and states that he will return to earth to defeat the Antichrist. That's why Donald Trump's painting depicting himself as the son of God offended the president of Iran. It was an attack on his religion as well as Christianity. Today's Morning Note newsletter covers Masoud Pezeshkian's condemnation of Trump's desecration of Jesus, the Iran war's gutting effects on America's housing market, etc. You know, it matters little if you disagree with Trump's decision to go to war with Iran. That decision does not mean that Islam is a compatible religion with the West. A poor decision, in your opinion, that Trump may have made does not change another reality. You can condemn Trump's decision to go into Iran, but it's something different to then become a sympathizer with the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is evil. The mullahs are evil. And this guy is trying to paint Iran not as the terrorist regime that it is and has been for 48 years, but as a regime to sympathize with. So now we're going to, in true Trump derangement syndrome fashion, side with radical Islamists because we're united in hatred of Trump. Tucker Carlson is insane. I want to tell you something. This whole Muslims love Jesus too routine, it's the kind of, how do I say, feel-good kumbaya nonsense, the drive-by media, the interfaith crowd. They love to peddle to make everybody feel warm and fuzzy while ignoring the 800-pound gorilla in the room, or should I say the camel in the tent. It's very slick. It's very deceptive. And it's designed to do what? To guilt trip Christians into lowering their guard, blurring lines that are as irreconcilable as night and day. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to bash individual Muslims as people. Christianity teaches us to love our neighbors. It teaches us to pray for those who persecute us. But let's get real about theology here, because this isn't some harmless overlap in a Sunday school pamphlet. This is about truth claims that cannot both be right. Yes, the Quran calls Isa, their version of Jesus, a prophet born of a virgin, a miracle worker, even returning at the end times. This sounds familiar to Christians, right? Superficially, sure. But strip away the happy kumbaya talk, and what do you have? You have a counterfeit Jesus, a demoted sidekick in Muhammad's story. Not the eternal Son of God, not crucified for your sins, not risen from the dead. Christianity rises or falls on the divinity of Christ, the cross, the empty tomb. Islam rejects all of that flat out. Surah, whatever it is, says God neither begets nor is begotten. Islam calls believing Jesus is the Son of God shirk, the worst sin, associating partners with Allah. Their Jesus denies ever claiming divinity, and the crucifixion. Nope. It only, quote, appeared so. Somebody else got nailed up there. Allah whisked the real Jesus away. No atonement, no resurrection. As Paul said in the Bible, if Christ isn't raised, our faith is worthless. And when their hadiths talk about Jesus coming back, he's not returning to hug Christians and say, well done. He's breaking crosses. He's killing pigs, symbols of Christianity, abolishing the jizya by force and leading everybody straight into Islam. It's not a shared reverence, Tucker. It's eschatological checkmate. Jesus as a Muslim warrior fixing the corrupted Bible. That's not love, Tucker. That's theological how do I say, colonization? So in other words, this Muslim president of Iran he's quoting is basically, we respect Jesus more than you do. We don't make him God. Yeah, by turning him into a prophet who proves Muhammad right and Christianity wrong. Fascinating stuff. Look, this isn't a Abrahamic cousins holding hand, Islam and Christianity. These are mutually exclusive faiths. One says Jesus is Lord and Savior who died and rose. The other says that's a lie, and the final prophet is Muhammad. Pretending otherwise is not building bridges. It is eroding the distinctives that define them. And obviously, of course, the biblical Jesus warned against false prophets and wolves in sheep's clothing. And this fits the bill. Tucker Carlson is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, you know, this Iran angle with Pezeshkian whining about Trump's AI image desecrating Jesus. I mean, this is peak hypocrisy, my friends. These are the same people running a theocracy where converting to Christianity can get you executed, where they fund terror groups targeting Jews and Christians, where insulting Muhammad gets you killed. But suddenly an AI image, an AI meme of Trump in healing pose is a crisis? Come on. They're not defending the prophet of peace. They're scoring propaganda points against Trump, propaganda points against America, against anything that smells like bold Christian imagery. Their reverence for Jesus doesn't stop the persecution of actual Christians who worship the biblical one, the ones who believe in the cross they deny. So, you know, this Muslims love Jesus line is classic interfaith pablum, or worse. It's tacky adjacent rhetoric that's actually meant to soften us up for the slaughter. I mean, look at 1,400 years of history, folks. Please. Conquest, dhimmi status, jizya tax on Christians and Jews just to exist, church burnings, forced conversions. That doesn't scream brotherly love for Jesus followers. Sharia isn't some ancient relic. It is the existing, current, present day threat to liberty around the world, while the left obsesses over equating it to Christianity's past. You know, I just want to be clear, Christianity isn't required to hate Muslims, but Christians are called to discern truth from falsehood. That is an obligation. So don't let the elites, don't let Tucker Carlson guilt you into equating the two. The real Jesus is not a footnote or a tool for subversion, Tucker. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And there is no amount of slick propaganda that is going to change that fact. And that is why we have to stay vigilant. You know, the people in charge with influence, they love to blur these distinctions because clear ones subvert, alter, threaten, I guess is the right word, their narrative. But, you know, truth doesn't negotiate, and neither do I. Neither do I. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I don't know how anybody can keep listening or believing Tucker Carlson with this type of stuff. I mean, it's so overt. It's not even subtle anymore. It's not even subtle. All right, folks. I'm going to be out the rest of this week. I've got a work trip that I'm embarking on early in the morning tomorrow. So I will, if I have time, I will, update my Substack, drewallen.substack.com. I will post articles there. But otherwise, I will be away from this microphone. But I just want to thank you for being here. I do want to look at a couple comments before we go. Deb Jacqueline, thanks for tuning in. Oh my goodness, she says, you mean to say both major political parties are rife with mendacious turd logs? That's fair enough. Look, I mean, this is a bipartisan issue, and that's the point I'll make. I mean, look, I'm I'm a stalwart Christian. I'm a stalwart conservative. You know, if you listen to me, you don't like, but I mean, I don't deceive anybody about my my faith or my beliefs or my conservatism. And as a conservative, you know, there are problems in Congress and it is corrupt. And Deb, you know, we agree on that certainly. And then Marlene Popos, thanks for joining on YouTube. She says it's total deception what Tucker is saying. Yeah, it is. What Tucker did is far more offensive than Trump's repost of an AI meme that was, you know, offensive to many Christians and many conservatives because it appeared to liken him to Christ. Now, Donald Trump doesn't think he's Christ. I mean, he famously said he doesn't think he'll get into heaven. But it was totally a poor thing to repost. And to Trump's credit, he took it down. He took it down. And you know, Trump is Trump, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the good outweighs the bad and the ugly. But what Tucker's saying is worse than what Donald Trump did, reposting an old AI meme of him healing somebody dressed in robes that certainly anybody with a brain equates with, you know, Jesus. But for Tucker to use that and then platform and talk about an Iranian Muslim president and use that propaganda to suggest that, you know, Muslims and the Iranian mullahs are better than Trump or respect Jesus more is outrageous. The Iranian regime will kill you if you're a Christian. So I don't play those games. All right, folks. God bless you all. This is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. Until next time.